To Art's Place, conservative talk from a different view, from the Casablanca studio in Golden, Colorado. Hosted.
No, it's not Art's Place anymore. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of our new revamped show called Three Conservative Gimps. It's going to be me, Lloyd Mendenhall, and Mike Roach. It should be a great show. We've got a good show today, and we've got a guest that's going to be on our show. former Congressman, Michigan, Thaddeus McCotter. So let me bring up my my co-host, the second Gimp of the three Gimps. Let's welcome all the way from Muskogee, Oklahoma. It's Lloyd Mendenhall. Hey,
Hello,
Lloyd.
Art. Hello. How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. So I need a haircut's what I need.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I woke up. Judy and I both woke up real early this morning. Like at 7:30. But I set my alarm because I knew we were going to do this show today. Uh, I got a little confused yesterday, but I'm old. So, anyways. And then I fell asleep finally and went back to sleep, and the alarm went off, and I'm sitting there running around, like a two-headed chicken. So, anyways, but I'm ready to go. So this should be a good show.
All right.
I definitely like
That's
the new logo and the new name. I got to get that logo from you so I can put it in my
all right.
titler here. So
Sounds great. Let's bring up our triumphant Mike Roach, all the way from Syracuse, New York, the good orange man. Let's welcome Mike Roach. Welcome.
Hey guys.
Hey, Mike.
Hey.
Hello, Mike.
Hey, no, let me change cameras here a second. I screwed this up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, you are coming from a little bit different angle there.
Right. Let's see.
Camera one, camera two.
I only got one. Well, I only got one camera, so.
Still the same camera.
Hang on one sec.
All righty. While you're doing, there you go, Mike. Welcome. Hey, let's get this show going. Because we only have Thaddeus McCotter for a half an hour. So let's welcome all the way from Livonia, Michigan, former field goal kicker from Central Michigan University, rock and roll guitar man in Congress. Let's welcome the ever talkative Thaddeus McCotter. Welcome.
Well, it's great to be back with you guys. I have no idea where you got the whole Central Michigan field goal kicker part from, but the other part was accurate.
Well, it's politics. Who's accurate?
We didn't even have a football team at the University of Detroit, Art. So Central Michigan.
You have a darn good basketball team.
No, I played high school football, and then I realized, that was about it.
Where'd you go to high school?
Of incompetence, and I went into politics and reached it there.
I went to Royal Oak, Michigan. Royal Oak, Kimball High School.
Oh, yeah. So you wanted, I apologize. I wanted to make time because I always like to make time for you guys. My middle son just moved into a condo, so I got to help him later. So you wanted to talk about the Canadian truckers?
Yes, that's right. And how it's affecting folks in your neighborhood because the Ambassador Bridge is pretty much closed down because of the truckers. So how is that affecting Detroit?
Yeah, we still have the bridges up in Sault Ste. Marie with Canada. We have the Blue Water Bridge. We have a tunnel in Detroit as well. But the Ambassador Bridge is a critical link. Canada is a huge trading partner, not only with the United States, but clearly with Michigan. And so there are concerns. I believe Ford Motor Company's idled some people because of a lack of parts supplies and things like that. But I'm supportive of what they're doing. Obviously, they're doing it for freedom. They're doing it to protect themselves from what they believe is the government overreach and intrusion into their own private medical decisions. And I think that the government of Canada is being rather obstinate and very short-sighted, which is not new for Mr. Trudeau, obviously.
Yeah.
And I would assume probably the best way that I've seen this described was that the Babylon Bee said that Mr. Trudeau wants to stop the truckers from shutting down Canadian industry so he can do it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I mean, you have mixed emotions here in Michigan. It's very important to our economy, but I think a lot of us very well understand what they're trying to do and trying to accomplish. And it if you really think about it, is very frustrating, because when you look at the same people who said that a virus would let you go protest Black Lives Matter and would somehow spare you, are now talking about doing horrible things to the Canadian truckers who are actually engaged in a peaceably assembling, petitioning for government for the redress of grievances, which is the way it's supposed to work. Now, granted, they're a parliamentary democracy, they don't have a constitution, but you would think that in a free society with a representative government, their government would be well versed in the rights of the citizens.
Yeah. Under a parliamentary government, can they not can the parliament not have a vote of no confidence and then push for an election? Because that's my understanding.
Yes, you're right. Well, you've seen some members of the Liberal Party actually talking about how the government has to be more flexible and has to recognize that, forget the science, but the politics of the pandemic have certainly changed. We've seen that in Michigan, even with our own governor, who's attacking the truckers for being out, for not letting commerce come through. But she's not gone back to the way that she's governed at the start of the pandemic either, because we don't have the restrictions and a lot of the lockdowns that she had in place earlier. So even liberals in Canada are talking about recognizing the reality of the economy and trying to find and respect the rights of their own citizens, because they must recognize a political danger here.
Yeah, I've noticed
electorally. I'm not talking about
right. I've noticed that here in the States, a lot of the liberal governors and certain, a bunch of liberals, they're backpedaling now because the polls came out. It looks bad for them, and this is an election year, and a lot of them say, "Oh, we're going to lift the mandate. That'll make everything better," And what worries me is they're going to do it enough that the landslide that the conservatives were hoping will happen may not happen, because we've got from now till November, if the liberals that are in power that are in place now start backpedaling and changing things and start looking a little more conservative than what they are, well, the people go to the polls and say, "Oh, well, it wasn't so bad. They did lift it. We complained and they lifted it," and blah blah blah. And this is. And that's here in the States, and I see that there's a possibility if we as conservatives are not careful, the liberals could change the outlook of the election of what we're expecting it to be, because the Democrats aren't complete idiots, and they're seeing the poll numbers and they're seeing what this is doing to people, and now they're looking at what has happened in Canada, and they're thinking we need to maybe move a little towards center right now to keep so that we don't lose quite so bad in November. And that's what worries me,
Right. And our governor here in New York State, she actually reminds me of Whitmer in many ways, just in mannerisms and whatnot. And she's not even elected governor. She was put in after Cuomo was taken out. And she's come off the rules a little bit lately. And in fact, this Thursday I went to the mall with no mask on for the first time. It was great. And so I'm afraid that people will see it as like, well, look at all the freedoms they gave us, where they haven't given us anything. They still have us under restrictions. So, but Lloyd, you're right. It's hopefully they don't look like heroes somehow by loosening up the restrictions.
Well, I think you're right to be concerned, but in the final analysis, you can't message or backpedal your way out of this. The American people have the opportunity to see democratic policies in action, and clearly they don't like them. I would be very concerned if Mr. Biden were at 70% approval rating rather than down in the 30s.
Yeah,
I think that the Democrats are doing what they have to do to survive. But that doesn't mean it work. And I think you're going to be very frustrated with a lot of the things they do because of the hypocrisy of it and just the disingenuousness of it as they scrape the ball on their way down the drain in 2022. So I think it's going to be very frustrating. But in the final analysis, their policies don't work. And whether you loved him or didn't, Mr. Trump was an enormous personality. He was a magnet, and he was a lightning rod for love and a lightning rod for hate. But once Mr. Trump was out of the way, the Democrats had nothing to obfuscate from their policies and how they failed. Inflation isn't going to go away because you put out a press release. The economy, the jobs situation is going to get better because you put out a press release. The situation with Ukraine, the situation with communist China, the persecution of the Uyghurs, these are not, Afghanistan isn't going to go away, the retreat from there because of a press release. So with all of their support from their media allies, propping Biden up and everything else, he's still in the 30s because the policies don't work.
Yeah.
So what I would watch for, so that we all don't get ulcers, is to make sure that you keep an eye on the policies. As long as the policies don't work, Americans, being very practical people, will vote against them.
Yeah. I think in some ways the Canadian trucker situation is kind of, in some ways, it's helping us because it's bringing to light all of this stuff, not just in Canada, but here in the States. Hey, we've got some of these same situations that these truckers are complaining about. And I think it's really, and it's also showing the difference with, as much as the press has tried to make it, as I've heard some of the pundits on the liberal channels, espouse that, oh, it's an insurrection. That's a new word that they learned back on January 6th. Yeah, it's the new collusion. They had to go to their thesaurus and look. Well, I'm having trouble with that word today. Anyways, they had to go to their dictionary and look up some new words to start throwing into their press conferences. And these so-called reporters, that's what they're calling this now, a new insurrection. It's like, it's compared to what BLM did and what we saw across and the damage that still some of these cities still have not recovered from all the destruction that was caused by Canada. And I love it when I saw, I forgot who it was that tweeted out, said, go flatten their tires, go to steal their gas and then tow them away. Well, it's hard to tow one of them big tractor rigs with all those flat tires, and no gas. How are they going to get them out of there?
That was someone from Obama's Homeland Security Department, I think an Undersecretary of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you don't want to be next to one of those big tires if you slash it either.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not dealing with the sharpest knife in the drawer, which is probably why they have to work at Harvard. So when you start to deal with these people, but what you're seeing is fear because the elitists, the leftists, they're scared to death because their policy doesn't work. And so they are continuing what we saw under Obama and others, is the continued weaponization of government to stifle dissent and crack down on dissent because they can't handle full and free debate. They have to lie and project their own sins upon their victims. And so, again, it's going to be very frustrating with the American people see through this. Remember, these are the same idiots who called dissenting parents domestic terrorists.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, this is not an act.
Now, I remember when
on their part.
When Hillary Clinton said that dissent was a form of patriotism.
The highest form of patriotism, unless you're yelling at her. Then you're a terrorist.
Yeah. The hypocrisy is, I've always known the left to be hypocrites, but it's right now it's so blatant. And I think in some ways that's where the Canadian trucker movement has actually helped, because it's not just happening in Canada. It's happening in other countries now too. And,
I know the left likes to talk about election numbers and things like that. So let's look at Mr. Trudeau. He's been prime minister, but his party's received less votes than the Conservative Party has because of how their ridings are structured. Remember, they're parliamentary, so they do it by the basis of seats and coalition governments.
Yeah.
So the Liberals have actually got less votes than the Conservatives did in Canada, and yet they're governing. So all our friends on the left here in America that want to talk about just pure democracy, well, Trudeau was not purely elected to be the prime minister. It was done through a coalition government and a coalition of parties that got less votes than the Conservatives did.
Right.
Now, do you see a way for Trudeau's is so entrenched and dug in his position right now? Is there a way for him to back out and save face at this point? Or if he does back down, will he crumble.
This might be a time when a magic scientific study pops up that says, well, we can do this now after all.
Nice.
But I wouldn't have done it if it weren't for this report.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how they can manipulate the science to say what they want it to,
The virus has allowed me to relax my restrictions. It wasn't you truckers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. And that's probably what will happen. Although I saw that they've been moving the police are trying to move in and open the bridge back up. But that might have been from yesterday. I don't think it's working. I don't think they're going to be able to.
As Roger Kimball pointed out, he just had a piece in American Greatness today. He says that he cites that this could be their Ceausescu moment in Canada. Remember the Ceausescus in Romania?
Yeah.
Eventually the public said, you're done. We're done with you. And now he's not talking about the sanguinary action of executing or removing him. No, he's just talking about politically just that the Liberal Party in Canada, by doing what they're doing, much like what Biden is doing and the Democratic Socialists of America are doing here, the public is looking at them going, no, we don't want to. We're done with you. And I think that the more he escalates, and especially if violence is what they resort to try to break the truckers' demonstration, they're just going to reveal themselves as people that the Canadians do not want to govern them anymore. I live real close to Canada. I love Canada. I go there often. Well, not since the pandemic, but I've gone there all my life. And you have to think that there's basically it's kind of like New York City, and there's the rest of New York.
Right.
I can tell you that.
Sure. There's Ontario, and then there's the rest of Canada.
Yeah, one of our viewers who lives in Canada, Uncle Extra Medium here, he says the Liberals are a minority, and it wouldn't take much, if and I see them, I don't know what other party is coalesced with the Liberals right now, but I can see maybe the coalition, the other parties in the coalition, switching over to the Conservative side, and
well, I think it might actually just be a Liberal coalition. It might not be. We're not that well versed in it, but either way, the Liberal Party's got fewer votes than the Conservative Party did last time. It's a question of how their ridings are structured and things like that. But the one of the things you have to understand with Canada, and if you live near like New York, and you're the guy who comes in, is there's really two kinds of Canadians. They're nice people, but you have the Trudeau Canadians, and then you have Don Cherry Canadians.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling the Don Cherry Canadians are all for the truckers' protest, and the Trudeau Canadians are scared to death of it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you're seeing right now.
Yeah. I the world is keeping an eye on this. That's the had we as conservatives done this in the United States, of course, we would be labeled as terrorist and insurrectionist and all those other catchphrase words that they like to throw around. But the Canadians, we've got this idea that the Canadians are such calm and peaceful and nice, apologetic people. I mean, that's the joke that you get about it sometimes. And no offense to my really good friend here. It's the Liberals plus the NDP versus the Conservatives that Jim Beauchart just put up there. So that's the coalition government. If the NDP decides to, which I assume stands for National Democratic Party, if they decide to jump ship and move to the conservative side, well, that would probably end Trudeau's procedure.
I think the NDP might actually be more left.
Oh, okay. The New Democratic Party. You're right. They might be.
Yeah. And they're not quite. I mean, a conservative in Canada is not a conservative in the United States.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Boris Johnson over in the UK.
Yeah.
Else. But I think you're right. I think even as we've seen other countries, it's not just the United States and our specific governors backing off or reducing restrictions. You've seen people like England. You've seen other countries starting to ratchet it down that they know the public's done with this.
Yeah.
And the science does not support a continued ratcheting up. In fact, we're seeing studies like I think John Hopkins put out a study saying the lockdowns didn't really do anything except make things worse.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
medicine had a side effect that nobody wanted to mention until it was too late.
Right. Yeah.
So if you get, and this is part of the reason that the Democrats through Mayorkas over there at Homeland Security is starting to talking about, oh, COVID deniers and oh, election deniers. These are potential domestic terrorists. The truth is starting to come out. And the truth is not favorable to what the policies the Democrats enacted throughout the pandemic, or what they did to rig the election prior to the election in 2022 by changing all the rules regarding balance. So as the truth starts to filter out what they did or didn't do, they want to make sure that anybody trying to talk about this can be labeled and silenced or have the chilling effect of big government looking over their shoulder. Again, this is despicable. It is unconstitutional. Every single one of these bastards should be impeached for what they're trying to do. But more importantly, the good part of this is that it's a sign of weakness on their part. They know the public's catching on to them, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that we don't talk to each other, to petition government to redress our grievances by getting rid of them in 2022's midterm election. And we will.
Right. And, it's great that it's truckers too, because you were so dependent on truckers for everything. So what are the, I know they've talked about stripping them of their licenses and their livelihoods and all these threats to get the truckers to back down. They seem to be holding their ground, and it's spreading around the world too.
Yeah.
To the States, it looks like it's coming our way, and also in Europe. I know in some of the countries over there, the truckers,
especially in France.
France,
driving on
New Zealand as well.
These are the people, and my mind hasn't changed, and I'm sure yours hasn't either, guys. These are the people who were heroes when the pandemic started.
Right.
Yeah.
They did their job regardless of the risk to themselves, just like healthcare workers and everybody else. And these are the very same people, like healthcare workers, people like my wife and son, that are now having the government threatening to ruin their lives, throw them out of work, and call them domestic terrorists because they don't want to have to get a mandatory vaccine. My mind hasn't changed. The science hasn't changed. Yet the liberals can't abide any type of dissent, and they're going to ruin people's lives for this. People who were heroes a scant 2 years ago.
Yeah, in another show that I co-host, in early on in the pandemic, the host of the show actually brought on some, because he's a retired trucker, and he brought on some of his friends, and they were explaining what they had to go through to make deliveries. This was in the early stages, or after it really hit hard, that first phase of it, and they explained all, and it's like these guys are, and it was a married couple, and they were still out there doing that in spite of, at the time, all the risks, all the unknowns, and they had to wipe down all the stuff we were told to do to keep from getting it, which didn't work. Like myself, my wife and I had both vaccines. We hadn't got the booster yet. We ended up with COVID anyways. Fortunately it wasn't, it was Omicron, and it didn't hit us very, very hard at all, but it was a pain for a couple of weeks. I'm telling you, it was, because we're both immunocompromised, we both got health issues, and it's just like, it was a rough couple of weeks, but we made it, but these truckers, we'd have them on the show, and they just, the stuff they went through, of course they were our heroes. And like you said, now they're being maligned as enemy of the state. And this very much, this reminds me a lot of the workers in Poland, that finally broke, Lech Walesa and his group there. They finally broke the back of the Communist Party in Poland, and was able to finally bring democracy there. Well, tell me.
It's one of the things, and the Soviet Union was a classic example of this. And you see this now even with the left in the United States. They claim to love working people. They claim to love blue collar people, as long as they can control them and make their decisions for them. At the end, it was a great irony that the vanguard of the proletariat in the Soviet Union was destroyed by the proletariat itself. And the other thing that they hate are believers in God. They hate people of faith.
Right.
Those are the two things that destroy any totalitarian regime.
Yeah.
Blue collar people and people who believe in God.
Yeah.
And we see that. We see that everywhere. And so again, it makes perfect sense why the left is always engaged in a war on religion. It's engaged on the working class, no matter how they try to mask their intentions. And you see this with the working class in the United States beginning to realize that once the Republican Party realized and woke itself up to the problems that we're facing and started going back to and appealing to working class people, they started coming back to the Republican Party just like they did when Ronald Reagan was there.
Right,
and that's
right.
going to continue as long as the Republican Party keeps its head out of its butt and does what it's supposed to do.
That's always been the problem of the Republican Party is they either get too blasé about life, okay, we've got this, we're standing up for conservatism, and everybody knows that's a wonderful thing, but they don't explain why it could be, or they don't go to the people and, they just, and they get, well, they're calling us bad names, they're saying bad things about us, but we're above that. And, they're flat out lies 99% of the time, but we don't have anything to go to the people, go to the workers, go to the average American. I've always said the average American, everyday people like us right here, we're not far left and we're not far right. We're not on that ultra conservative, super ultra conservative side, nor are we on the, our most American. I'm talking about the average everyday, the person you meet at Walmart,
Despicables, deplorables.
Yeah, the deplorables, as we were called, and we never really stood up to that. But we did take that and own it,
Yeah.
We made that a rally cry, and it seemed it helped, but
Like,
we need to.
Brandon.
Let's Go Brandon is another one right there. That's another.
Well, we did, we actually used a euphemism and we made fun of them instead of just using the F word, which they used about President Trump. They actually used it about Bush before that. In the end, what I like to refer to it as is patriotic populism. It's you love the country, you cherish faith, family, community, and country. And you like things that are practical and work. You're fundamentally, you think America's a fundamentally good country. We can improve our union. Let's be smart about it. And that's about it. And I think that's the vast majority of Americans. You see this in the polls, that when you take the Democrats' proposals and stick them up like critical race theory and things like that, the country just fundamentally rejects them out of hand. And you're going to continue to see that. What the Republican Party has to do is go back to its roots, to remember that they are there to voice what the American people feel and to act upon it, and to be champions of American freedom and allow you to pursue your happiness in the ways that you see fit, and to protect you from big government, big labor, and big business.
One problem I think I've noticed with the Republicans, though, is it's always easier to be like the loyal opposition when you're not in power and you're not responsible for breaking anything. And like the Mitch McConnells of the world would almost rather not have control of the Senate. It seems like it's a more comfortable place. When you're in the majority, then you're responsible for getting things done. And so I hope they just went I hope we have a similar thing to what happened in '94 with the contract with America.
You might not see that with Kevin. I know Kevin McCarthy. I mean, he'll do everything politically that's necessary to get the majority in the House, and with McConnell, but I don't know that you have a visionary like you had with Gingrich. Newt was a pretty visionary guy. He married the politics and the policies together. But I think Kevin and even McConnell in the Senate are going to get us where we need to go, which right now, everybody needs to be on board for the midterm, and then we will sort it out, and we'll get a nominee before 2024 that will give direction and shape to the agenda for the party heading into the next presidential election. But right now, we have to focus on 2022 and stop the bleeding. It's like battlefield triage right now, man. This country can't afford another 2 years of a Democratic majority with this heinous administration.
Oh, it's
and we will. I want to end on a good note before I go move furniture and ruin my back again, which I did not hurt field goal kicking at Central Michigan, Art. is I would have been a straight on kicker anyways. But the point is,
But you
think
shanked
it's
it
going
to
in
the
the right
right.
direction politically for the country. Unfortunately, it's not going in the right direction for the country, and that's why you have a midterm election to wake this administration up and get them out and to get things back on track. I think we will. And thanks for having me, Art. I'll give you more time next time because I'm running out of kids to move.
Well, thank you very much, Thaddeus, for coming. It's always a pleasure having you, and thanks
Absolutely.
for being on the first episode of 3
Conservative
CG.
Gimps. Yeah, 3CG. Yeah.
Conservative.
Yeah, Thaddeus, it's always good talking with you. I enjoy it because I know we've talked before a couple of times on here, and I always enjoy when you're on here. So thanks for coming on. Really.
Same here, Lloyd. Nice to meet you, Mike. Hang in there in New York, baby.
Right. Thank you. We will.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
That's I love it when Thaddeus comes on because he can take something that you say and he really thinks it through, and he's very passionate about his points. He's really a great he's a great guest. I'm glad he was on the first, because one of the Epstein Steve wanted to know what 3CG stands for, and I explained it stands for 3 Conservative Gimps, because the three of us, actually, we kind of made that name up last week, didn't we?
Yep, I think we did. Yep.
Yeah, that was just last
I
week.
have
We were
a
talking
birth
about
defect. Lloyd has MS.
MS. Yeah.
Mike is, well,
Just pretty
yeah,
messed
an
up.
accident.
Yeah.
Messed.
Yeah. Are you
Spinal cord
quad?
injury.
Yeah. Are you considered quad, or are you just paraplegic?
Quadriplegic, because my
Quadra.
arms are about half paralyzed.
Yeah. That's what I thought. So yeah. And of course, I've been in and out of a wheelchair. And
quad.
yeah, but you can fly a quad. You probably fly better than I do.
With joysticks, and it's almost more intuitive for me because I've been using an electric wheelchair,
Electric chair. Yeah.
with a joystick, and so it becomes like part of your body. And so do the drones with enough flight time. Those moves become intuitive, as you guys know.
And until you just said that, because you guys know I fly Flight Simulator because I do it sometimes on Mel's show, but I've been doing it for years, and it uses a joystick. I am always more comfortable. I never connected those two until you just said that, because I was 6 years in one of those things. So
Right.
I had to learn how to, first one I had, it was a rental that the insurance got us. That thing was, it was dangerous. I put my niece and nephew on my lap because they thought it was cool, and I still had the use of my right arm, but I'd lost the use of my legs, and we were on there, and we just moved into this house, and we had clear living room floor. Didn't have a lot of furniture in here. We had one, and it's a long living room. It's like 22 feet long and 16 feet wide, so it's a long run. And I put them on my lap, and they like to go fast, so I hit that thing in full blast and went from one end of the living room to the other. Unfortunately, as I said, it was used, and some of the mechanics inside the controller locked up, and I hit the wall. I let go of it and pulled backwards, but it kept going forwards. I hit the wall with him in my lap, and then the tire sat there and spun until somebody reached over and shut it off. Like, oh my God. So you can't hurt yourself in those.
They're extremely powerful.
They are.
You have to, keep up the maintenance, because I've been using them for 44 years almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like they're dangerous if they're out of control. So, and I had a few close calls over the years with things. So, but yeah.
I like what Epstein Steve says. It says, great name, not to mention you guys have a PR angle. And if you just try it a little, if you care to, we can get a ton of press, and that's it. And we're not using the GIMP. This has been a joke between us for a couple of years now. I think one of us, I said, it's Grumpy and the Two Gimps, or something like that, at the time. But 3 Conservative Gimps was something we tossed around last week. And and Art, you did a great job on the logo. It's did he send you a copy of them to show what they? I've got a copy of that.
Yeah,
did he give you?
I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah. Did you like I like this, the one we're using, the 3CG Freedom one. I think that's an awesome logo.
Yeah.
And Art, I told you I needed a copy of that. You sent me a copy of it, I think, so I can just when you showed me what it looked like, I can just make it off of that.
Yeah. All you have to do is Messenger. Just click on it, and then you could
save it.
Click on it, you can save it. Yep.
Yeah, I'll just save it, and I'll replace that.
Yeah, there you
with
go.
the 3CG. I love Titler on vMix, because it. But yeah, Thaddeus was great today, wasn't he? That was.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Yeah. So let's talk about subtraction and division in politics. How each party, how it's hurting them or hurting them the most. Now, on our side, the Republican side, the subtraction would be Trump still going on and on about how the election's been stolen. That's ancient history. That we need to get away from that. For the Democrats, they're doubling down on insurrection and all this nonsense about masks. Oh, you need to wear a mask. You need to wear a mask. All the science. And it's like Thaddeus said, it's backfiring on them, and the public they're finally seeing it. And
right. Well, even in the bluest states now, though, the science is changing as we speak.
Yeah.
And, here I'm in one of the bluest states in the country, and the governor who's pretty out there to the left is beginning to back down on the mandates.
Well, even in California, Newsom has already dropped the mandates there. Yeah. And this is what concerns me, and I forgot who it was that put it in the statements that, let's see, where was it? Chris Wedgeworth said people have short memories, and that's what concerns me, and that's why we've got to explain that, and as conservatives, we have to be ever vigilant against these people, because they're just, he said something about how they claim to be for the working people, but and yet they don't. You guys know I watched Downton Abbey with my wife, and one of the gentlemen one of the characters in that is a Irish Republican, and he was talking about the Bolshevik Revolution, and that's what Thaddeus mentioned the Soviet Union, and he was talking about the Bolshevik Revolution, where because this was filmed this was made around from 1915 to 1925 was the time period they cover, and they talked about the Bolsheviks and how they have the Tsar and the Tsarina and the children, and it says, well, they're imprisoned right now. They're not imprisoned. They're just being held. But they he was a socialist, and he says, but they won't kill them because, why would you kill children? He says it doesn't do any good. And then they turned around and did it. And it kind of changed. And then he was involved with a thing up in Ireland in which they were throwing out one of the lords of the manors, and he was all for it until he realized, when he saw the family and their children standing outside as their castle burned down, the humanity of what it did changed his perspective. And this is something that the Democrats right now, the average American Democrats that are working class people, that they see this stuff now, and they're like, this isn't what we want. But elitists that are in the Democratic Party, they're all for it,
Yep. And what will end up happening is a lot of those Democrat voters will just stay home, because won't vote for Republican. They may vote for a third party, but most likely they'll say, I just don't like what the Democrat Party stands for today.
Right.
So they'll probably end up staying home.
I hear that from people all the time here in
Right.
Oklahoma, and we are a conservative state, but I talk to people I know are Democrats, and they're just like, I can't stand this party and what it's become,
Yeah. Hopefully just during the rest of the year, the states that were the questionable states with voting laws and mail-in ballots and stuff, that those rules have been tightened up where there is no excuse to go back to that less stringent voting method. There's a little more room for error, let's say, in that complete mail-in thing. We got to go back to election day, except for those. I don't know the early voting is something I never even heard of a few years ago, and but now it's it's like you get to vote all year, and
we had early voting in Oklahoma for about, I think, the last 10 years, but there were specifics, and it was a very tight window. It's like 2 days before the election. If you didn't want to stand in line, you could go down, and you had a specific place you had to go to. It wasn't like every phone booth. Oh God, there are no phone booths. What am I thinking? I'm showing my age. Yeah. It wasn't like,
where is Superman going to go?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like it wasn't on every street corner. It wasn't at every convenience store. Now it seems like you can go vote on your ATM at any convenience store in town. I mean, that's how bad it's gotten.
Right.
And you can do it in January.
Phone booths, they have Zuckerberg boxes to.
Yeah, there you go.
And so
Well, here in Colorado, we've had mail-in ballot for 10 plus years, but it was pretty, tight. And it's like, well, maybe 2 days before the election, they'll say, you don't mail it in, drop it off at the drop-off box. Now, where we have the problem is it's what's called ballot harvesting, which is illegal here in Colorado, but the Democrats still get around that rule because now they're only allowed, they can't have more than 10 ballots. So what they'll do is they'll go to one nursing home, get 10 ballots, then somebody else will come in and do 10, and they'll just move from one nursing home to another, and that's how they get around.
Yeah, see, our mail-in ballots here for years has always been, it was for the military, residents of Oklahoma.
They were absentee ballots.
It was absentee ballots, and for people that were handicapped that couldn't get to the polls, or like Judy, she can't get out and get to those polls, and so she would do a ballot here, and we mail it in, and I would do one too, simply because, and the fact is once that ballot went in and they opened it up, my name was checked off, because here in Oklahoma, you walk up, they look your name up in the rolls, you sign it, they check it off, but you also have to show your driver's license.
Right.
Now, I don't know how
that yet.
Yeah, we either show, or you can show your voter registration card, but you got to show some form of ID that says you are that person, and that voter registration card has a number on it that matches the number in the, I thought we were pretty backwards for years because of the way now when it comes to filling out your polls, everybody sits at a table, because like where I vote at is just a block down down here from my house, in the church rec room, and that, boy, I got in trouble in the newspapers when I mentioned that, hey, how come I can't have prayer? How come we can't have prayer in school, but I can go vote at a church? Isn't that a conflict of, isn't that a conflict point?
Right.
Oh my God, the old ladies got up in air because the reporter didn't put everything I said. I called them and asked the question, and the editor called me back, and they wrote this article, and it sounded like I was against prayer in school and voting in churches.
Right.
My point was if we can vote in a church, why can't we have prayer in school? But then the old ladies got up and I got all sorts of nasty stuff written about me, because they're using that as part of their quilting bee money or their foreign missionary work, and they use that money to help with that. And it's like, I was taking that money away from them. It's like, that's not what I said. And I went to my own church.
So evil, Lloyd.
And them old ladies jumped on me, and Judy come unglued on them and says, "You wait a minute. You know Lloyd better than that. Now just back off." And I explained to him that the press did exactly what they always do. They twisted my words, but
Right.
that was a good point. But yeah,
one of the best ways to see how bad the press is and how inaccurate, even if they don't have an agenda, they're just plain inaccurate. They're lazy.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're part of the story and you were there, and then you read the story the next day, and it's like, no, that's not the way it went down.
Yeah, exactly. And all you got to do is either send in something to the editor and or call and speak to one of the reporters about, like with that situation. That was absolutely not what I said, but they only took snippets of what I said and pieced the story together. And they left out the point that I was trying to make, was that we should have prayer in school if we can vote in a church. There's no, because separation of church and state, we should not be allowed to have a church as a polling place.
Yeah.
If we got that, but if we don't, then we should be able to have prayer in school.
Now, this goes into another story that I just read this morning about this person. Her last name is Lake. She's running for Congress, I believe. And she was doing an interview with some TV station down in Australia. And this person used to be in the media. She's a former television anchor person. So she knows all the ins and outs about this. What she did really smart is she brought in her own cameras to make sure that they weren't twisting what she was saying. And they were trying to do a gotcha moment by saying, well, weren't you endorsed by Donald Trump? And who do you think was the election stolen? So that's going to be the trick that the media is going to use against conservatives this election cycle. Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, whether you think it was stolen or not, whether you agree with Donald Trump or not, it's over. There's nothing. We're so far into it now that even if they turned it over tomorrow, the best we would get out of this is we'd end up with Nancy Pelosi as our president.
Right.
We don't want that, because if the election was rigged and they turned it all over right now, if they completely reversed it, they would have to remove Biden and Harris, and that would leave Nancy to step in, and we don't want that. And it's not going to happen because, the way to handle it is to have another election. That's not going to, our Constitution doesn't actually have, other than making the Speaker of the House, we do not have a position or a rule for what happens if we have to remove both the president and vice president. What do we do, or in a rigged election?
Right.
And
there's no mechanism for it.
Yeah, there's no mechanism in place. I mean, you go back to Grant, Ulysses S. Grant. That was about as crooked. I mean, there were so many. There was one election I just read about it, and it might have been Ulysses S. Grant, or it might have been Buchanan. I can't remember now.
No, I think it was Hayes.
Yeah. In which the election,
it was the the history guy did
Yeah,
a thing about
just did one. That was it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it was Hayes. And I mean, that was it. It really was never,
Yeah.
it was never
That was
decided. That was just like,
Yeah,
oh,
that
well.
was one of those close elections that came down
Well, hello, Rodney.
electoral college.
Hey, Rodney.
Yeah. One vote. And even that was in question. You know, I mean, it was,
Yep.
yeah. And I think this is where we're at now. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's move on. And if Trump wants to be the nominee for 2024, he's going to have to be more of a politician and less of a TV star now. I think it's time for him to step up.
His ego is pretty big. I don't think he's going to drop that. You know, it's the way he is. I'd rather see somebody like DeSantis.
If Trump runs, I hope he picks DeSantis as his running mate.
Yeah.
I think that would be that would be the most winnable party we could get.
The only question is, would DeSantis do that?
Well, look at Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. They were not, they butted heads during the convention and before that, and they were because Bush 41 was running against Reagan for the nominee, and
Isn't he the one who coined the term trickle down economics?
No, that was a Democrat.
Okay,
thing. That goes all the way back to who was it?
I think Reagan used it a lot, or Bush, one of the two, used that phrase a lot.
Well, it actually goes back more than 100 years ago.
Does it? Okay.
I think it was Blaine that used it when he ran for president, where he talked about how the goodness of capitalism is going to trickle down like rain from the heaven, because
okay.
It's more of an epitaph more than reality.
Yeah, right.
And the thing is, 140 years ago, with that election, way back when, the federal government wasn't in your daily life the way they are now, and and now they're literally in our daily lives.
Right.
Oh yeah.
There's no income tax.
Right.
They got their money from excise and tariffs.
Yeah.
How they.
Right. It's definitely different times.
Yes,
for sure. So
yeah.
But I agree. Trump has he can't try and run in the same way he did before if he were to decide to run. And also, I'm afraid, regardless if Trump runs again, the dog whistle will go off for all the rioting and burning to start, and people will vote against him, so it will end.
Yeah. And I would prefer Trump to be involved in a different way. I think he could. I think if he gets behind, like DeSantis and or Ted Cruz or somebody like that would run, if he were to get behind them and give them the kind of support that they need, do the whistle stop things, he is great with rallies. I think he. Hello, Steve. I think he pumps up the crowd. He can really work the crowd. And he's shown that he can do that for other people.
Right.
Just in this last year, and I think if he did that, and Mr. Trump, if you're listening, no disrespect, I thought you should be president now, but you're not. So we need to move on. But I think he could do so much for the party and keep the party, because right now the conservatives and the conservative movement is tighter than it's ever been. It's not scattered to the four winds, and but at the end of it, in another 3 years, we have to make a decision who's going to be our representative as the president. And if we're as divided as we were in 2020 and in 2016, we might as well just, shut down as a conservative group, because that's, we're not doing our jobs, and like I said, I thought President Trump was, I didn't pretend, somebody should have taken his tweet away from him. I think Jeff Dunham does the best routine, where he has that dummy comes on that's supposed to be Donald Trump's assistant. He says, "Why does he always tweet?" He says, I've tried to take his phone away from him, but he goes in the bathroom and tweets, and it's, so yeah, that was a little less tweets I could have done with,
Yeah.
He's actually
Trump caught him by surprise in 2016. They thought they had it in the bag, so they didn't restrict social media back then. Right now, what you'll be allowed to say on social media will probably be incredibly restrictive this coming presidential election, unless those companies take a real beating.
Yeah, I like that. Hola todos los three C Gyros. Did I say that right? My Spanish is bad. I haven't used it or spoken in. I haven't spoken as a regular language probably in about 40 plus years, about 45 years. But anyways,
I took French school.
Yeah, I should have taken anything but Spanish. I actually flunked Spanish. I wanted to take it in my night. Yeah. The reason was because, I wanted to take it in 9th grade, and because we moved from one school district to the other, their rules were different. I'd worked hard in the 8th grade. You had to have a B in English before they let you take Spanish. Like that was really Spanish. Yeah, well, it was close enough. I understood what you said, but anyways, so when it came time, I finally took it in 10th grade. And fortunately, I still got the good looking teacher that taught it, but I wasn't as interested. And then in my junior year, I started dating a Mexican gal, which I ended up marrying. And I ended up learning Spanish, that way. You get yelled at it enough. You start understanding what they're saying.
Oh, yeah.
But
Dale.
Yeah. But, I wasn't interested in the class when I finally got into it. It's just like, I wasn't interested in school at all. I was boring because I could pick it up easier just talking with somebody, than I could reading all that garbage and writing it down and repeating the tape over and over and over. It's just like,
yeah.
But then I haven't used it now about.
Where I work, it was before we moved, before the company shrunk, we had a lot of Hispanic gals there, and I would wow them with my Spanish. I would say, oh God, I forgot some of the stuff.
That's me. I go to say something. Sometimes if I don't think about it and I'll say it, Judy will look at me like, what? Oh, sorry.
Oh, and then I would make up my own Spanish words, where, the gals would just be chattering, and I'd say, no blah blazo. And just look at me like, blah, 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 blazo.
FC Steve says, I did terrible in Spanish because I lived in New York. I thought, why the heck do I need to learn Spanish? All Puerto Ricans speak English. Yeah, living in Texas or in, I spent time down New Mexico one year, and because that's where my family's all from, and it's like, you learn.
Steve Epstein is a former comedian, and he lived in Houston back when Sam Kinison was getting started. And
right.
And Jimmy Pineapple and those guys, Steve McGrew, who's still touring right now.
Wow.
Yeah, moving to Texas, you're going to, that's what I discovered down there. I got, it really upset me because when I'd go down there, we'd go down there for the winter. We did that for 2 or 3 years before Judy finally got too sick to travel. I tan up pretty dark. I look pasty right now, but that's because I don't get out there in the sun. But Steve, thanks.
Yep.
Tequila Taco
Robert,
Bell.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
Yeah. Well, that would be right.
I remember those ads, remember?
Yeah, Yo quiero Taco Bell. Yeah, well, I tan up, of course, my hair was kind of white. And so with a darker skin and white hair, and every time we'd go down into Mexico and we'd come back, Judy, her hair was blonde. She was very light-skinned, Irish looking, blondish red hair at the time. She hadn't dyed. And she'd walk on through. As soon as I got there, they said, "Are you a U.S. citizen? Can we see some ID? We need to," like,
no, habla inglés.
Yeah, it's like, what do I look? And we best neighbors on our block other than my son. Well, actually, they're best neighbors on our block. I was going to say other than my son, but are the Mexicans across the street. They are the nicest people. When they have a big party and big cookout, they'll bring food to us because we're having to listen to the noise of the, oompa bands on tequila, as I like to call it. But they're really great people, and they bring over some good food, and they're just always nice. If they see we're having a problem, something's going on, they're over here checking on us and stuff like that. But it's like, but when I'd go, and they thought I was Mexican too. They thought I, like, no.
Well, I would have fun with the gals at lunchtime when they eat their tamales, and I go, "What? You're not going to eat the shit? That's the best part of the tamale."
Oh, the husk.
Just look at me like I was nuts or something.
Well, it's funny with the whole ethnic thing, and we're not nearly as divided as the politicians and the media make us out to be.
Yeah, exactly.
We get to know each other. Now, in terms of the border and illegality and all that stuff,
that's a different
subject, really.
Yeah.
Be from Poland, but we really don't have that much that divides us in any ethnic way. Anyway, people are people.
No, I use that example. Judy and I went to Walmart here a while back, and there was a couple black people there that were walking out, and they were talking to Judy. I was having to do something. I was checking out. She went outside, and they were checking to make sure she was okay. They were very attentive, sat there and visited with her, and then I came out and I had my Air Force hat on, the one that Steve Carpenter bought me, and they saw I was from the Air Force. Turned out this guy's dad had just retired, so we sat there from the Air Force, and so we sat there and talked. I've not heard anything. I think we had 6 people stand out there during the summertime last year before, whenever all the BLM stuff was going on really heavy. They stood out there holding their signs, and they had one cop car sitting there, and they were just sitting there. Yeah, that was it, And I think in that crowd, there might have been 10 people there in that crowd. 3 of them were black, and the rest of them were a bunch of skinny jean wearing, man bun wearing white kids, Yeah. The blacks were smart. It was too damned hot to be out there. It was like 90 plus degrees. And the only reason the cops were there, they'd get out and hand them a bottle of water so they could cool down, And in Oklahoma, but especially Muskogee, pound for pound, we got the biggest women on the planet. They're all our average of women around here. They top out about, their average top out is about 250 pounds. So that's a lot of that, Some of them needed to be out there to sweat off a few pounds, but they were smart. They stayed. So we didn't have that big problem. We didn't have that, and it's hell getting through Walmart when you got 2 of them standing in the aisle.
Are you saying they got junk in their trunk?
Junk? Hell, they got a whole damn junkyard.
Or when you're walking down the aisle and you have to wear 2 yellow flashing lights to say wide load.
Yeah, that's some of them need to. It never fails. You go down, you go down an aisle, and there's 2 of them standing there with their shopping carts. One's facing one way, one's facing the other, and they're both taking up. And Walmart does have some wide aisles, in some of the areas. And when you can't get through the wide aisle because one's looking that way and they're standing next to each other because they're covering, cheek to cheek and shelf to shelf, it's just, anyways, that's like I said, they got the whole damn junkyard, not just in their trunks. Yeah. And spandex should be outlawed for anybody over 125 pounds or 150 pounds.
Good God. The spandex. It looks like a bunch of
spandex is a privilege, not a right.
Balls in a bag.
Yeah, exactly. Spandex is a privilege, not a right.
Yep.
Boy, this show went off the rails, Art.
Right.
But the good thing is they don't have a camel toe. They got a butt in the front.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen the ones with baby butts on the knees?
Oh yeah. And especially here in Muskogee, you're going to see it all. And Mike, you and I talked about this last week. I think going through Walmart while you're in a wheelchair or in a scooter, that eye level is like,
right.
Oh my God, really? Right. Oh, I used to, yeah.
You do get some views.
And back when I was in the wheelchair when I was in the wheelchair all the time, some of the medicine I had on made me just a little bit, well, I just didn't give a damn. And I was a little, I was a pain in the butt for most people. And these people get my way, and it was nothing for me to unload on them. It's like, get your wide load.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Lloyd, I would say, excuse me, coming through, and I go through.
I wouldn't even say, excuse me.
Coming through.
I just like, go home and put on more clothes, because what I'm seeing right now is ugly as hell, lady. And I would say, Judy, my kids, and Judy was just like, oh my God.
Is this the front of you or the back of you?
Yeah. When you're in that position, and Art, you walk in that position because that's your eye level. Mike, you've been, and I've been there. This is why we're called 3 conservative gimps. Right here. We can talk about stuff that a lot of people can't.
Right. It's our gimp privilege.
It's our gimp privilege. That's right.
Yep, that's right.
Gimps are us. We're
We've done just over an hour. We're closing in on an hour and 15. I want to thank everybody in the chat for coming to the show.
Yeah,
I'm glad you liked the name change. Some of you need to come a little earlier. None of this tardy stuff. We're going to be taking a roll call here. So
yeah.
get here about 45 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
So,
and Steve Epstein, welcome to the show. Yeah. He
Steve, always great. Steve Epstein. I've known Steve for quite a while. I think we crossed paths either here in Denver or back in the Midwest. And he had this headshot that
Robert says, sorry, Art. He was late to the show.
He had a headshot that always stuck in my mind. And then when I ran into him on Facebook, I go, are you the guy that had the headshot where you had the little porpoise, because his tagline was comedy with the porpoise? And he had a little plastic porpoise.
Yeah. That's a good tagline, actually.
So when I was explaining to him about the name change, I said, well, it's politics with the porpoise.
Yeah,
right, exactly. Yep.
All right, everybody in the chat, thanks for coming. We'll catch you next week. We'll try to bring more great guests like we did with Thaddeus McCotter. Hopefully we'll have him back down the road where he could be with us more than a half an hour. So take care, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Later, everyone.